Hey guys, it's Will with Vinyl Appreciation Society. This is a new segment. It's called 7 Super Underrated Heavy Albums. So I'll say before we get into this that these are not the 7 albums that I think are the most underrated heavy albums of all time, period, no question. This is going to be like a little series that we do where, every couple months maybe I'll do another one of these videos where I collect, like a handful of underrated heavy records that I want to talk about that I think don't, get the appreciation that they deserve. They're going to be kind of different genres. So by heavy, I kind of take that designation from when I was in college. There was a heavy music director at our college radio station, and I was actually the heavy music director after I graduated from college. I had that position for about a year, and so that person handled everything that you couldn't kind of shoehorn in as rock music, right? So it was like metal, all types of metal, hardcore, punk, metalcore. I'm not going to put any punk bands in here because I feel like that's its own category. So this is going to be mostly hardcore, metalcore, and metal. And again, this is not the definitive video of this title. There will be more. Tell us in the comments below what records you think deserve kind of a shout on this, and I'll kind of start compiling lists for future episodes. And as always, if you feel like subscribing, that would be a huge help. Thank you so much. So let's get into this. Number 7, I have the Tropic Rot from Poison the Well. This was released in 2009. This is the last Poison the Well record. Poison the Well is one of those bands that really, like, their first album is so classic and their second record is so beloved, and the third one has such a huge fan base that when they took 4 years off and put out a completely different record, I think so many people wanted the same thing again and again and again that record completely threw them. And that was almost like the end of the band's career, in as much as they went on a trajectory at that point that they could not come back from. And I think that that's really unfortunate, because I think that Versions and the Tropic Rot are two of their strongest records. The Tropic Rot is a really great album that I've been revisiting recently. So it came out in 2009, like I said, that's 10 years ago, as we filmed this in 2019. And I watched an interview recently with the drummer, Chris Hornbrook, who's the drummer of Poison the Well. And he was talking about how this is his probably favorite Poison the Well record. And it's just a really interesting album. And it's an album where it feels like the band was like, screw it, we're going to make the record that we want to make, not thinking about anything that anyone else is wanting us to do at all. Like on Versions, you can kind of hear them trying to rediscover themselves. And then on this record, I mean, and this is like a weird record. So as you may not know, Ryan Premack, who is the kind of like the lead guitarist of Poison the Well, he is really into like jazzy stuff and like weird sounds that you don't expect to hear in hardcore records. And there are like riffs on this record that are like surf music. There are like jazz chords. There's stuff that makes me think of like westerns and like Ennio Morricone and stuff like that. But it is very much like a metalcore, like a punch you in the face, heavy ass album with just like really crushing riffs on it. But it has this really left field sense of like, what genre is that coming from? And like this really strong sense of melodicism. And as always, the vocals and the lyrics are really fantastic on this record. So I just really love this album. And I think, if I remember correctly, they said they've recorded it for basically no money. And the producer they recorded it with was really into matching sounds. So he would like find a snare drum and be like, oh, we got to play this with like that guitar and that amp, because the way that this snare rings after you play it, it's like it'll match the tuning of that guitar. It's like all this kind of stuff. And the sonics of this record are really awesome. So I have this record on CD. I should say I don't have the vinyl, but I didn't bring it in today because my CDs are all in disarray because I just like moved a bunch of crap around in my apartment, and there's like boxes of CDs here, boxes of CDs there. Some of them I can't even find. So I was like, screw it. We'll just throw out the album cover. People will be familiar with it. So number 6 on my list of 7 super underrated heavy albums. Hey, guess what? I have the vinyl for this one. It is Self-Help by Spitfire. This album is freaking incredible. Like, this album kicks you in the face and in the nuts, and it just throws you down on the ground and pisses on you. So if that's an experience that you're looking for, you have to. This is the reissue that I think is the 10th anniversary. It would be, right? Because I think I got this maybe 3 or 4 years ago. And like I said, it came out in 2006. So as I said, and this artwork is just like creepy as hell. It's like this like old, like public domain, like 20s old-timey, but they have these like evil horns on them. So this band has 3 ex-members of Norma Jean. If you know what Norma Jean sounds like, the sound of this record will not be surprising to you. It's just like really aggressive, heavy, grating. I mean, this is like a nasty record. Like, if I remember correctly, the first lines on this record are "Come join us pigs at the meat market," and the whole song is about how everyone is a pig and they're all at the slaughterhouse together and they're like committing cannibalism, like eating their siblings. It's just like the most brutal, cynical, disgusting, and the riffs are just so dirty and heavy and atonal, and like songs change time signature like 3 or 4 times, and like I don't know if you can see that, but this is like a split, almost like army green with black vinyl. And when I heard this album, I was like, holy hell, like this band is going to be huge in like the metalcore kind of like underground, and it never happened. And I think they only put out 1 or 2 other records after this. They broke up for a bit, they got back together, they broke up for a bit, they got back together. But, and this came out while I was the heavy music director at my college radio station, which was 91.1 WMUA in Amherst, Massachusetts, UMass Amherst. And this record just blew my mind, and I would play this every week on my show. I would try to get the other DJs who played heavy music to play this on their show, and it just never became the album that I thought it was destined to be, because the songwriting is so strong and the performance, like, there are a lot of heavy bands that sound great on record, and then you see them live, and it's like they're so much more aggressive live. The unbridled like aggression and savagery that this band was able to create in the studio is like mind-boggling. So Spitfire, Self-Help, highly recommended, fantastic record. I think this is on Goodfellow Records. This is the New American Records / Goodfellas, 7th or 10th. What am I saying? 10th anniversary reissue. Who does the 7th anniversary reissue? Come on! Number 5 on my list of super underrated heavy albums is actually a band that I sort of know personally. Like, I know the members, but I'm not like BFFs with them. I don't call them every day, but I did know them in college. The band is called Wasteland. So this is another band that never really took off. But so to tell you the full story of this, they broke up before this record was released. And this is a self-titled album. It's on Clean Plate Records, which is out of Amherst, Mass., which is, I think, owned and operated by Will Putney, who is in Orchid and Ampere. And he runs Dead Air Studios, and he masters a bunch of stuff. So he's like mastered like some prominent black metal records and stuff like that. I mean, as far as underground black metal goes, like prominent black metal records. But this is just like this record. So this band is kind of like D-beat, crust punk, that kind of like hard. Like I think of like the Hope Conspiracy, Trap Them, Dysphere, Cursed, like that kind of genre of hardcore. And I saw this band a couple times, and their bass player is the one I knew the best, because he worked at Newbury Comics, which is the record store in town, and so I would like talk to him a lot when I would go into the record store. But I honestly think, and I'm not speaking hyperbolically, I honestly think that this is as good as any Hope Conspiracy record, any Cursed record, any Trap Them record, and I think that this band could have been like a leader of that scene, and seeing them live, like they're really tight as a band. Their energy is on point. They're really aggressive, and there's some epic songs in here that almost like verge into like epic screamo kind of. I don't want to say screamo because I know there's a bad association with that, but like really emotional, screamy, like aggressive hardcore. It's just like, this is really an incredible record. And as I said, this is super underrated heavy album. So of course I think that about this record, but I mean, only 300 copies of this record were ever made. And I don't even think they're sold out. This is kind of like a maroon, like transparent maroon vinyl. And this record is $10 too. So plus shipping, it's maybe 14 or 15 bucks. Like you can't get better bang for your buck than that. And then I think the download of it comes with the 7-inch that they put out, the name of which I can't remember, which I did have a copy of. I actually bought it from the band directly. And it's a very long story, but I ended up losing almost all of the physical music that I had when I moved from Massachusetts to New York City. So I don't have that anymore. But then it also comes with the live studio sessions from the band. So there's a lot of like download. It's basically everything that was ever released by them or ever recorded by them comes with the download. So self-titled album. This band is called Wasteland. It's freaking awesome. Okay, so next up, number 4, right? Are we on number 4? I'm getting lost in my list. I'm not even looking at the right list. People, what is happening? I'm losing my mind. Call of the Void. So if you watch this channel, if you follow our Instagram, you know that I'm a huge fan of Call of the Void. They recently called it quits. That was a big-time bummer for me. I would say, like, along with Sumac, they have been my favorite new heavy band of this past decade, of 2010, 2020. They combine grindcore, punk, hardcore, metallic hardcore, metalcore, like And they're just such an incredible band. Their songwriting is kind of hard to describe. Like, I hear Neurosis, I hear Converge, I hear His Hero's Gone, Pig Destroyer, like so many different bands. So their most recent record is called Buried in Light, and I think this is the best record that they have released. I have 2 copies of it, as you can see. This combines like the visceral, really aggressive kind of punk side of what they do with the really sophisticated songwriting of their second record, which is called Ageless. I really just love this record to death. I can't say enough positive things about it. As you can see here, this is a really awesome record too, because it's like blue, white, gold, kind of like merge. So this record is like, it has that grindy crust punk. The singer and vocalist for this band in interviews said that they were going for like a Cannibal Corpse as a punk band vibe. I don't listen to a ton of Cannibal Corpse, so I cannot tell you whether or not that is an accurate description of this record. What it sounds like to me is if you took slow, epic Neurosis and sped it up and turned that, because I know Neurosis was like a hardcore band back in the day, but if you took their mature sound and sped it up and turned them into a hardcore band, that's what this sounds like to me. And the lyrics on this record are like really, really strong. And it seems to be almost like a concept album about just like like cults and like cult-like religions and people willfully committing themselves to a life of servitude to someone else's beliefs and ideas and way of life. And it's a very bleak record, but it's a really, really incredible, really strong record in that subgenre of music. It's a big time bummer for me that this band called it quits. They actually recorded their last show professionally, and they're releasing it on Bandcamp and YouTube. I guess as a video on YouTube, as audio on Bandcamp, and I'm hoping they put it out on vinyl because they did tag their record label, which is Translation Lost Records, in the Instagram post. So I have my fingers crossed that they're going to put it out on vinyl. So number 3 on my list of super underrated heavy records, which is number 3 for a combination of how much I love it, but also how super underrated it is, because I'm not kidding you when I tell you that no one I have ever met personally, like friends of mine, other people I talk to about music, knows who the hell this band is. And I discovered it by accident. I honestly don't even remember how I first heard them. It was on a blog somewhere. And then I went to Amoeba that weekend and I was like, hey, let me see if they have that record. They did. I bought it. The band is XI. The record is XI. I don't even know what the hell to tell you about this album. This is one of the most original, 40 minutes of music I've ever heard in my life. There's 4 songs on here. And then there's a 5th song that you get with the download when you buy this album. Colin Stetson is in this band, who's a saxophone player. He's like an avant-garde saxophone player, if that's a thing. There's a guy who plays synthesizers. There's a drummer who's in Liturgy, which is like this kind of like black metal / post-rocky rock fusion band from Brooklyn that I think a lot of people dislike because they think they're like hipster black metal or something. I don't know. I don't know them that well, but I've liked what I've heard from them. And then there's a guitar player. So there's 4 people in the band. And it's like, if you were to imagine, let's do a combination of black metal and post-rock, but plot twist, we're a jazz band. That's kind of what this is. It's just completely insane. Like, there's blast beats with like a bed of synthesizers and these like jagged, discordant guitar lines going on, and then someone is soloing on a saxophone, but the saxophone is like echoed to within an inch of it in his life, so it sounds like there's like 50 saxophones buzzing around you like a hive. It's just insane. And I can't, like, once I put this record on, it does not come off, and that includes physical and in the car. Like if it's on my iPod, it's just a black record. There's nothing too exciting about this. There is like a color variant of this. This is on Relapse, but it's like kind of green, I think. But I didn't get, like I said, I bought this at the record store, so I wasn't like online ordering, being like, let me see which variant I can get. But I mean, this album is just freaking nuts, and it's just incredible. And I don't even know, I try to tell people about it, and I'm like, I don't even know what to tell you about it. I got this for a friend of mine who's like a musician, like a really accomplished musician, he plays multiple instruments. He's playing in a ton of different bands, and he was blown away by it. And he was like, what the hell am I listening to? And like, what instruments are they playing, and how are they making those sounds? And like, he was like kind of dissecting it for me and telling me like that's that and that's that. It's an awesome record. So to get into my top 2, so these are records that, objectively speaking, if you were to sit down and listen to them, they might not be as appealing as some of the other stuff I mentioned, but they are among the best heavy, and these are like more kind of like metalcore records, the best heavy records that I have listened to that I have loved, that I had copies of, that I just listened to over and over again. I don't have physical copies of either of these because of the thing that I explained to you about how I lost all my physical media. It's not worth going into right now. But no one, like, I very rarely meet anyone who knows either one of these records. And that's not to say that I'm this great, messiah who's into all this underground music. Like, the first band I think I first heard of because I saw them live, opening for, it was like Terror or Modern Life is War or something. And I was like, this band is freaking awesome. And then the second band, I read about, I think on Lamb Goat, they wrote this like really glowing review of their record. And I was like, okay, I gotta go check that out. And it's just like, anyway. So number two on my list of super underrated heavy albums is Moving Units. The band is called One Dead, Three Wounded. They're out of Philadelphia, and they play basically like southern metal mixed with like converged type metalcore, or maybe like Darkest Hour, like Unearthed, like that kind of metalcore with some melodic death metal influence, right? Which obviously you have in Darkest Hour and Unearthed. So it's like that kind of sound mixed with southern metal, like to the point that like they're playing riffs that would sound totally at home on like a Down record, an I Hate God record, a Corrosion of Conformity record, and it is recorded like almost like a punk album. Like there's no trigger on the drums. There's it doesn't even, I mean, it was probably recorded in Pro Tools given the fact that they didn't have a lot of money and they were like an underground band and that was like the easy way to do stuff, but it sounds super organic, like it was recorded in someone's garage. The performances are so on point, the guitar tones are really organic and warm and fuzzy, and the drums are just like, the drums sound like nothing I've ever heard on a heavy album before, like a metalcore type album. Like they sound like a punk album or even like a garage rock album. But they're like, the guy is an incredible drummer and he's like a big fan of like the perfectly timed, like very tasteful bell hit on the cymbal, which I love because like ding ding and then like the heavy riff comes in, like that kind of stuff. It's just, I mean, this album is, and the songwriting, it's not just the sound of the record, it's not just the fact that they're combining these genres. We were like, what? The songwriting is really strong and the lyrics are fantastic. And this is a concept album about the commodification of art, basically. And about, I mean, you could apply it to movies, you could apply it to books. Obviously, they're applying it to music. It's called Moving Units, right? So it's about the cynicism of the record industry and the way in which something that you are passionate about, you either have to, it's kind of like a cynical take of like, if you have to have a career and you have to have, and if you have a personal life and all these things, eventually, unless you turn the thing you love into a commodity, you cannot have it anymore. So it's pretty depressing and bleak, but fantastic record. Moving Units, One Dead, Three Wounded. This band broke up after this record came out. I think they broke up in 2007. So what is that, like 12, 13 years ago? But they recorded their last show and released it as a DVD, which is super cool, which I have a copy of somewhere at home. I was unable to find it to bring it in to show it off for this. But definitely check that record out. And number one, and this is really like a splitting hairs. Number one could be number two, and number two could be number one type of situation. But number one, underrated heavy album for me. It is called All Is Not Lost. The band is Architect. It came out in 2007. Architect is a band from Buffalo, New York. And this is like Coalesce, Botch, like that type of hardcore. It's kind of mathy. It's so raw. Like other than the first Slipknot record, it's hard for me to point to a studio album that has the same degree of just like savagery and brutality and aggression of this record. It's a very political album. It came out during the Iraq War, obviously, the Bush administration, and it really looks at the bleakness and the corruption of that era. And this album, this band recorded two records, this and Ghosts of the Saltwater Machine, which is, I would say, almost just as good, basically. It's just I heard this one first. They're apparently working on new music and have been for some time, just like on their own, kind of recording things slowly. They've played a couple shows in the past couple of years. I missed my chance to see them when they were first around. They broke up in like maybe 2008, 2009. I would love to be able to see them. This is like a landmark album for me for heavy music. And again, it's like super underrated. This is a very subjective opinion. It's not an album that I think blew a lot of people away or everyone points to as like the great, unheard kind of metalcore record of that era, hardcore record, whatever you want to call it. But it, I mean, I love political punk music and like punk music and hardcore music with an opinion and a viewpoint that is pissed off and has something to say. And that era in metalcore, I think, that wasn't happening. And then this band came and just hit you in the face with a freaking hammer. And this album is just, I can't say enough good things about it. So I'll include links in the description of this video where you can go find all these records and listen to them. Again, my number one super underrated heavy album for this video is Architect, All Is Not Lost. My name is Will. You've been watching Vinyl Appreciation Society. Much appreciated if you subscribe. If you're watching on YouTube, thank you very much. Let us know what your favorite underappreciated heavy albums are, and we will see you next time.